Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Gordon. We are back with another video. I am joined today by a very special guest, Mr. CH Egan. Thank you for taking the time to have a chat. We're going to be diving into everything about Bittensor TAO on today's call. I'm excited to pick your brain. I know you've been diving deep as well. For anyone who's not familiar, maybe you could just start off by giving us a very quick introduction. Well, not quick, as long as you want, an introduction about your background and maybe just a little bit about your journey into Bitcoin. And then I think, I've been able to get exposure to you from the Bittensor ecosystem. So yeah, maybe just a little bit about your background and your journey from Bitcoin into TAO.
Absolutely. Well, Gordon, first off, appreciate you for the invite. I got to say, hats off to you. You make fire content. I've been following you as well. And of course, we were both miners on Bitcast over at one of the subnets on Bittensor. So it's great to
Shout
connect
out
with a
Bitcast.
fellow, indeed, great to connect with a fellow miner making great content. So yeah, a little intro myself. I'm CH. I've been in crypto for 7 years. And so 2018 is when I first got in. I had various jobs before, but I was actually in gold. So it's pretty crazy to see the gold price today
Yeah, yeah.
compared to where it was in 2017 when I was in the gold business. But it's funny how I got into crypto. And just like everything else in life, you test things and then you fail and then you iterate and then you double down. But essentially, my first foray into crypto was a family friend told me about this AI trading algorithm. It's funny
Hmm.
how we kind of go full circle. But
Yeah.
in 2017, I saw the run up. But back then, all I read was the title of Warren Buffett says crypto is rat poison squared. So I was like, oh, it's got to be a scam. There's no way, crypto is revolutionary. And it's funny because now that we're in Bittensor, we understand incentives, right? Warren Buffett has incentives to not let crypto rip because he's one of the biggest shareholders in some of the biggest banks in the world,
Hmm.
right? So once you understand incentives run the world, you really start to see things as it is. Anyway, I then got into this crypto trading algorithm because a family friend that I trusted dearly at that time was like, "This is the move,"
Yeah.
and that is what kind of kickstarted my journey into crypto and learning about crypto and having incentives to be like, okay, what is it that I hold? What is this Bitcoin that I have? Bitcoin was traded at $6,000 when I first got in, and then it got cut in half to 3K, and so that was kind of my first experience with the crazy volatility of crypto.
Hmm.
Um, Fast forward 8 months after I got in, this AI trading algorithm ended up being a rug pull. So then I got scammed, but it's because of that experience, or should I say that opportunity is what got me into reading about crypto. And then from there, I became obsessed. And then all I want to do is crypto. And then in 2019, I met the founder, or should I say, the chairman of coinpayments.net. They're one of the
Hmm.
biggest crypto payment gateway in the world. I think they did like 30 billion of volume. Anyway, the founder of that created his own L1 at that
Hmm.
time. And so I was raising capital for them. I was doing marketing for them, getting on the ground floor. And then a couple of years later, it just absolutely went ballistic. It went parabolic from that last run. And
Hmm.
that's when I really experienced the power of the compounding in crypto that you can see in a short period of time,
Hmm.
right? Holding on for 2 years and just seeing that insane return. And then 2020 came along, COVID, and or should I say 2021 really is when things really took off in that last cycle. And I had financial freedom at that point. So I was like, what do I want to do with my life? And that's when I got into content. And so for a whole year, I obsessed about learning about content creation and again, trying, failing, doing a lot of different reps, and really got obsessed with content and crypto content and did that
Hmm.
for about a year. And unfortunately, as you know, FTX happened, three arrows, all this kind of things, and the whole market tanked. And of course, it was really my first cycle, and I didn't sell enough, so a round trip, a big part of my bag. And Fortunately and unfortunately, because it was
Hmm.
because of my journey into content creation, BitGet saw one of my videos and then was like, hey, we'd love to work with you. And then I started working with this massive exchange, which at that point, in 2022, it was still a very small exchange. I hadn't even heard of BitGet
Hmm.
at that point. And then now I'm coming up on my third year, and the exchange has completely blown up. We're top 5 in the world in volume. We got some massive partnerships, and this company is really what allowed me to network with so many of the top dogs in the industry.
Hmm.
And so I got nothing but love for BitGet, really giving me the opportunity. But I found BitTensor last year, January. It's a whole rabbit hole, as you know. It's
Hmm.
very complex, very hard to understand initially, but once you study, it's one of those things where, like in the early days of Bitcoin, when Bitcoin was traded at $400, you ask 5 people, what is Bitcoin? They'll give you 5 different answers,
Hmm.
right? And at that point, still not a lot of people know about it. It's still a very new thing, right? Digital currencies, blockchain, all that kind of stuff is very, very new. And most people thought it was a scam, right? Because they didn't understand it. And so with BitTensor, I think it's the same concept in that you need to do the work. You need to go and dive in and to research, deeply research and read for you to really kind of grasp what BitTensor is. And I always like to say, to understand BitTensor, you have to understand Bitcoin, because Bitcoin
Hmm.
is the 0 to 1. It is the granddaddy that started everything. But
Hmm.
BitTensor is kind of the next iteration of Bitcoin. It took from Bitcoin what worked best. What are some of the best qualities of Bitcoin? The decentralized ethos, the hard cap supply, the halving
Hmm.
schedules, the scarcity aspect of Bitcoin, the game theory that comes out of that. All of those things taken out and then applying it to how do we create useful AI work, right? How do we
Hmm.
create actual cutting edge AI output as a result of incentives? So again, I
Hmm.
think my experience with BitTensor really taught me to think in incentives, because like Charlie Munger said, Warren Buffett's partner, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And
Hmm.
that is so, so true. And it's super exciting what BitTensor is building. And I think we have escape velocity, and I can't not wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, a very exciting time. So, you touched on the creative journey, and just so everyone here is aware, CH does have his own YouTube channel, the Crypto Rabbit Hole. So make sure to go check that out. I think you're at ch_Egan on X as well. I'll leave links in the description so everyone can check out your content, your channel, etc. as well. But you recently also released a documentary about Tao called The Art of Disruption. I guess you were wanting to scratch that creative itch, and it was kind of a perfect marriage, maybe, of this going down the rabbit hole of BitTensor as well. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about the idea behind that, and obviously that probably came from the journey of everything you summarized over the past few years, your journey in crypto, Bitcoin evolving into BitTensor. So yeah, tell us a little bit about why you wanted to create a documentary, and then why Tao was the fuel for that creative output.
Absolutely. So I think for me, Tao, being in crypto for 7 years, nothing excites me as much as BitTensor.
Hmm.
And so I have massive skin in the game. For me, all I do is I buy the dips. I'm an investor of Tao. I'm not a trader. All I do is, whenever I have income, I see a massive dip, I buy. I keep it
Hmm.
super simple, stupid. So I've been doing that for the last almost 2 years. Now, in my content creation journey, um, actually, maybe take a step back. I think life is really funny in that so many things that happen throughout your life compound to who you are today. So, for example, the reason why we had this documentary was that it was not planned. We had no idea we are going to shoot this thing. I got invited to go to Proof of Talk because of my
Hmm.
content. It's funny because last year I made a deep dive video into BitTensor. It's like a 20-minute deep dive into Tau. And then in May, I just so happened to like retweet it again because I was like, oh, it's been a year since I made this video. My conviction
Hmm.
is even higher. I retweeted it, and a friend who works at Proof of Talk saw it. It was like, hey, would you want to come to Proof of Talk? And Proof of Talk was the gathering of the top minds of the BitTensor
Hmm.
ecosystem. And by the way, I'm based in Taipei. Proof of Talk is in Paris. That's a
Hmm.
15-hour direct flight.
Yeah.
So, like, in May, when I was looking, I was like, man, this is like the all stars. line up, but it's so damn far, 15 hours just to go to Paris. And then this guy reached out, and I looked at it, and initially I was like, oh yeah, thanks for the invite, but it's just too far for me. And I thought about it, I was like, when will be the next time all the top minds gather in one place? And I was like, F it, let's do it. And so I decided to fly out. So I went to Proof of Talk. And it's funny because a week before, one of my best friends that I've known since college, 20, or should I say 15-year relationship, 16-year
Hmm.
relationship, this guy is a well-known producer out of Hollywood. He even made a movie on Netflix, and he's produced a ton of different big campaigns for like Nike and
Hmm.
Adidas and Tinder. And he was even the one, he was kind of the head of producer for one of the biggest dubstep music festivals in the world called Lost Lands. So this
Hmm.
guy is like a genius when it comes to content and media and coordination. And he's one of my best friends. And he is heavy in the markets. He's also, a big investor. And I've been telling him about Tao, but he was like, yeah, it sounds cool, cool, but he's more like equities guy and Bitcoin. And then he was actually flown out by Mr. Beast. He was interviewing with Mr. Beast to be his like producer,
Hmm.
which then he turned down. But he
Wow.
was in New York City at that point. And he was like, it'd be a super easy flight for me to just go to Paris. And I was like, okay, why don't you do this? Is like the week before Proof of Talk.
Hmm.
And so everything kind of just lined up. So then he flew out to Paris with me. It was just us two. And we went to Proof of Talk. And he, of course, has his own camera. Like he's a videographer, you know, as kind of like the very foundational skill set that he has.
Sure.
And so he brought his equipment, and we just showed up, and we're like, let's just see what we can capture. And at BitGet, I'm also the host. So I host all of our content. I interview a lot of
Hmm.
the top dogs. And so I kind of combined that skill set with his videography and filmmaking, capabilities. And then we were like, let's just see what we can get. And then we captured this documentary, we made it together. And the response has been incredible. It's a 75-minute asset,
Hmm.
just straight talking about Bittensor. They've got like 11,000 views on YouTube, which for a 75-minute asset is incredible.
Hmm.
And we, because of this opportunity, we then now are looking to solve a big pain point in the Bittensor ecosystem, which is content and marketing. And
Hmm.
so my boy, shout out Joseph Gabe of Media3.ai, that's the agency that he created.
Hmm.
We are now looking to help really flourish the Bittensor ecosystem through content creation. And
Hmm.
so that is how it kind of all happened. It's just by
Yeah.
fluke. And we're just like, let's just show up and see what we can capture. And that was the end result.
Yeah, very serendipitous. I think if anyone watching this has not seen it, I encourage them to go and see it. It's on CH's YouTube channel, and interviews with all the top dogs and the heavy hitters in BitTensor. And if you're looking to really kind of peel back the curtain and get an understanding of what is happening, it sheds a really good light on that. So definitely go and check it out. Um,
Thank
you
you.
also Yeah, yeah, of course. You also mentioned a few minutes ago, in the early days of Bitcoin, when you would ask someone, what is Bitcoin, they would give you maybe, different answers. For five different people, give you five different answers. This is a difficult one, but if you had to try and summarize Tau and give someone a 60-second pitch of what it is, um, how would you do it in a simple, easy way to consume? And it's a very difficult question.
I would say if you only have 60 seconds to understand BitTensor, maybe it's not for you. But I will start by saying that to understand BitTensor, you have to understand Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So Bitcoin was the first network where incentives are aligned in a very functional way, so to speak, right? Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin as a centralized network. And all he did was he aligned incentives. He just said, if you come and contribute your compute, your electricity to the network for us to be able to send Bitcoin to each other,
Hmm.
for you doing that work, you will be rewarded with Bitcoin. And the rule is there are no rules, right? So it was just every 10 minutes, 50 in the beginning at least, every 10 minutes, 50 Bitcoin is emitted from the network to the participants, to the miners. right? And it's just programmatic money. So then, because miners are competing with each other to get this reward, you have this nonstop, continuous iteration of people trying to find ways to game the system, right? So, for
Hmm.
example, in the very beginning, it was people using CPUs, and it got to a point where like, oh, I can actually use GPU to beat all those guys, so I'm going to do that, right? So, what Bitcoin taught us is when you align incentives really well, people are going to compete to get that reward. And so you extract that, and then you what Bittensor did was, okay, instead of just one single incentive, which is just using crazy amount of electricity just to secure this network, which,
Hmm.
to be honest, there's really nothing productive that comes out of the Bitcoin network. Don't get me wrong, it's really important to have, a thermodynamically sound network where you can't inflate away, it's fixed supply, it's sound money, so on and so forth. If you're a Bitcoiner, you understand all these different properties. But how do we then use that same concept of aligning incentives to then create technologies or what they're called digital commodities,
Hmm.
right? Things that can really move forward, move the human species forward in creating insane value. And that is what Bittensor does. And so, what Bitcoin taught us is if incentives are aligned, a decentralized network can grow to become bigger than centralized entities combined. So, for example, Bitcoin as a network is currently bigger than top five biggest banks combined in market cap, without a CEO, without a CMO, without any kind of corporate hierarchy. All it is one incentive, the Bitcoin reward that attracted so many people to come on the network, and excuse me, and because of network effects, Metcalfe's law, the more nodes that come onto the network, the more secure and more valuable that network becomes. And so that's
Hmm.
Bitcoin. But the thing about Bittensor is like I said, it takes it the next step, one step forward, in that it's the next iteration. So instead of just Metcalfe's law, where just one more nodes come on, um, Bittensor leverages Reed's law. And what Reed's law is like Metcalfe's law on steroids. It's Metcalfe's law exponential. So what that means is each node within the network is its own network. So the compounding and the exponentiality of Reed's law is far superior than Metcalfe's law. And what's really cool is that now, if you've studied Bittensor, you understand Bittensor has these subnets, right? And each one of these subnets, they solve a very specific problem, and they create immense value using incentives, right? And what we're now seeing is the Bittensor ecosystem has escape velocity. Some of these subnets are creating cutting edge, state of the art AI output, not even just AI, just like it's just an incentive mechanism, right? And now you're starting to see subnets work together, right? So you and I were miners on Bitcast. What Bitcast incentivizes is content creation, and now
Hmm.
Bitcast is utilizing the biggest subnet, which is shoots, for a lot of their compute, right? So now you're starting to see these network of networks start to link with each other, and so God, nothing is as exciting as Bittensor and the exponential compounding that we're gonna get down the road. I mean, we're still in
Hmm.
such early days. We're year number 4. The halving, like you said, the catalyst is coming up, and if Bitcoin is any indication, you're gonna see a massive rip upwards leading up to the halving, and I think after the halving, maybe a few months later, when the supply shock is really felt, I think that's when you're gonna see just an insane drive up in price. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of my take.
We're still early days for sure. So I think one of the ways that a lot of people are describing Bittensor is as an incentive alignment protocol, which is pretty much what you alluded to with everything you were just saying. Is that ultimately the problem that it's solving for? And I know the interoperability of subnets, kind of competing against one another, but also collectively collaborating to continue to evolve the network as a whole is what we're starting to see play out in real time as well. Um, you know, is that the ultimate problem we're solving for? How else do you kind of view the problems that we're solving for? Because I do feel like it is slightly better than Bitcoin. You're having that proof of useful work or proof of intelligence as the kind of consensus mechanism versus just pure hash rate in the case of Bitcoin. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think with Bittensor, hmm, okay, I want to formulate this as best I can. So
Yeah.
I think, like I said, incentives run the world. If you want to drive a certain behavior, you need to have incentives. It can be external, or should I say intrinsic or extrinsic motivation, right?
Hmm.
Incentives. Now, the beauty about BitTensor and the Yuma consensus is that it's very flexible, right? You, whatever kind of problem you're looking to solve in a decentralized way, you need to write the proper incentive mechanism. And BitTensor as a network allows you to do that, which is why today you have 128 different subnets. They're all solving for very specific pain points, right? So, for example, you have Ridges, one of the top subnets. What do? They solve for coding agents. So, how do you make the best coding agent possible that can surpass any kind of centralized entities' capabilities? So, Ridges, as I'm sure you're fully aware, I'm sure you made a video on this.
Hmm.
Within 6 weeks of Ridges coming online, they were able to surpass Anthropic in its capabilities in solving for the SWE benchmark, which is kind of the standardized test within the AI coding agent. And that's 6 weeks of that subnetwork going live and just using incentives. By the way, less than $1 million in incentives, they were able to achieve that outcome. So, how do you reduce the cost as much as possible to drive the best outcome that you can? In a nutshell, that is Bittensor,
Hmm.
because subnets, they're using incentives to drive the value, and there's no corporate hierarchy in them. There's no employees, there's no HR, there's none of those like different bottlenecks that corporations have in being efficient,
Hmm.
right? So BitTensor subnets, all they do is they compete and they iterate, and it's continuously improving digital commodities that they're able to produce. And if you don't bring value, sorry, you don't get rewarded. So it is maybe the most efficient mechanism we've ever seen in the history of capitalism,
Hmm.
right? Because if you
Yeah.
look back to the state of capitalism, how did companies get formed? They're created, and then people have to, oh, I have to go hire people. I got to go and drive value to my stakeholders. But a lot of it is really inefficient. A lot of it is ineffective. A lot of money wasted. I mean, just think about all so many horror stories of companies raising insane amount of money from VCs and burning them through and maybe not creating shareholder value. How many VCs lose their most of their money because maybe they make many wrong bets,
Hmm.
right? So I think what BitTensor is really just, what are the problems that we're solving for? How do we keep refining the incentives so that people come on the network, they can participate, but really drive value? And you can bet that if you're a subnet owner and you design your incentives incorrectly, miners will go and exploit you like crazy. But I
Hmm.
think that's part of the design. You should be able to refine it to the point where you can't be exploited and that you were really efficient. So
Yeah.
I think BitTensor is really the restructuring of capitalism itself. When you really dive in and you understand how these subnets work, it's completely mind blowing and it's so
Hmm.
fascinating. And again, we're super early. It's all an experiment, right? Anybody
Yeah.
who says, "Oh my God, it's so volatile," yeah, no shit. Excuse my French, but these are early days experiments. And again, risk and reward. If you're able to take the risk, you're going to get rewarded like crazy. I really
Hmm.
believe subnets are going to have a crazy run when I think once Tau blasts this past all time high, because let's be honest, in crypto, price appreciation is the best marketing.
Hmm.
And as we saw from the last week, when Tau went up 40%, how many KOLs and how many people on crypto Twitter are just bull posting Tau,
Yeah.
right? And you and I have been making Tau content consistently, even through the massive drawdowns. And
Hmm.
so we've been in the game. But again, I think subnets are going to have a massive run. I think Tau, of course, will have a massive run leading up to the halving. But yeah, I just think subnets are a complete game changer in how we think about capitalism. That's all I
Hmm.
can say.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think, like you said, we have been seeing that value over the past few years and the past few months, and we're starting to see other bigger players, I think, starting to understand that inherent value as well. We're seeing Tau treasury companies, we're seeing, you know, large entities start to allocate and start to spin up hedge funds around Bittensor as well. Maybe for anyone who's not as familiar, could you shed a little bit of light on what you're seeing there? Maybe you've got some insights from the BitGet side of things, some of the Tau treasuries, some of the key people. Yeah, maybe you could shed some light on that for anyone who's like wanting to dive a bit deeper and learn more.
For sure. So I think anytime you want to spot the next winner in crypto, follow the smart money. Where are the smartest, most successful people positioning themselves? How are they doing it? So for me, the reason why I became so bullish on Bittensor is I started to look who are the most successful people in this ecosystem. Okay. So I think maybe to start off, we can go with maybe one of the most well-known people within crypto, which is Barry Silbert. This guy is worth, according to Google, $3.2 billion, a multi-crypto billionaire. He is credited as being the first person to institutionalize Bitcoin through Grayscale.
Mm-hmm.
He is the chairman of Digital Currency Group, which is one of the biggest conglomerates within the crypto space. They have Grayscale. They used to own CoinDesk and just a massive player within the digital assets ecosystem. And he is now stepping out and, or should I say, stepping in and becoming the CEO of Yuma. And Yuma is the company that is accelerating and incubating all the different Bittensor subnets, but also just the Bittensor ecosystem, uh, conducting various businesses in doing that. A little lagging here. I want to make sure we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Digital Currency Group, massive player. And so Barry Silbert is coming in. By the way, according to JJ, Barry Silbert is the biggest Tau whale. I think he owns something like 3% of the network,
Wow.
right? So you want someone of that caliber who owns a big pie and who has incentive to keep pushing the ecosystem forward. So
Mm-hmm.
he is literally applying everything he did right with Bitcoin, with institutionalizing it, and he's applying it to Bittensor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just search Barry Silbert on YouTube, all of his latest content that you see of him going on podcasts is all just shilling Bittensor. Like there's nothing else that the guy finds as exciting as Bittensor.
Yeah.
And he's going all in on this thing, right? So that's the crypto angle. Okay. Now, it's not just Barry Silbert. There are many other players who are immensely successful from Web 2, the Web 2 space, who are now diving into Bittensor. For example, the All In podcast, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. There are three billionaires who are sitting on that panel, and then another guy who's a centimillionaire. Um, Two of them are heavily involved into Bittensor. So Chamath Palihapitiya, he was a senior executive at Facebook. He was credited as the person who really drove network effects for Facebook. And then he came out and he became a VC, a billionaire VC. And I think it was like last year he was shilling Bittensor. He's like, oh, I found Bittensor. I encourage everyone to go look into it. And by the way, this is the guy that was shilling Bitcoin in like 2012,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you go and search Chamath. Okay. Anyway, we'll start from the top here. So Chamath is a crypto, or should I say a VC billionaire who is really into Bittensor now. And this is a guy that found Bitcoin in the early days. If you go and search Chamath, just search Chamath BTC, you'll see a video from like 12 years ago of him just saying, I'm super, super long Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin was like $300 or $400 at that time. By the way, very similar to where Bittensor is today. And he's
Mm-hmm.
shilling Bittensor today. So maybe a little foreshadowing there. But point is, Chamath is also really big into Bittensor, but then his co-host, Jason, JCal, uh, just started Still Core Cap, right? With Rob Greer and Mark Jeffrey. Shout out to those guys, good homies. And yours truly also is now a advisor to that fund. So
Amazing.
yeah, so it's been a great partnership with them. Rob is a dear friend. He was also in my documentary. So really, really cool to see JCal partner up with them and even mention Bittensor twice in the All In podcast in the last couple of weeks,
Hmm.
right? So, you know, JCal's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Chamath is a billionaire. These guys are all positioned themselves into Bittensor. Okay, so that's the All In podcast. All right, what about Google? By the way, Google, one of the biggest companies in the world. How are they getting involved? Well, there's a gentleman by the name of David Lawee, Lawee. This guy was Google's CMO turned VP. He's been at Alphabet for I think almost 20 years.
Hmm.
But in 2014, he created a company and he's the GP of Capital G. Capital G is Alphabet's third-party private equity investment arm.
Hmm.
They manage over $7 billion. They've invested into massive companies like Lyft and other IPO companies. Just huge, right? This guy's a capital allocator. He understands technology. He worked at Google for a number of years. He's a Googler, right? And he is now the co-founder of Crucible Labs, which is a company that accelerates the Bittensor ecosystem, along with his other co-founder, Ala Shabana, who co-created Bittensor,
Hmm.
right? And so David Lawee, I mean, I don't even know how much money he's worth, but either way, he's now going all in on Bittensor,
Hmm.
right? And then another Googler, the guy who created AdSense, like one of the most profitable business models of all time, is the co-founder of Ready AI, which is a subnet on Bittensor, along
Hmm.
with this other co-founder who was a senior executive at Disney, right? And then also Shopify's, I can't remember if it's CEO or co-founder. I think it's CEO. He's now also an investor into Manifold Labs, which is the company behind Targon, which is
Hmm.
Subnet 4, right? They do GPU rentals. So, I mean, these are absolutely heavy hitters who have immense success from the past, either from crypto or from Web 2. But now they see the value of Bittensor and distributed AI. They understand open source will win in the end. They understand if you throw a token incentive on top of an open source network, that in itself will accelerate and
Hmm.
top any centralized entities combined. I think that
Hmm.
is the world we're going to go. And I mean, if you look at some of these centralized AI companies, OpenAI, 500 billion valuation, Anthropic, $186 billion valuation, uh, just unsustainable. They're burning cash like crazy. They got to keep raising, just keep pumping the valuation,
Hmm.
and just unsustainable at the end of the day. And so, again, coming back to Bitcoin, what Bitcoin taught us is a well aligned, incentivized network will grow to become bigger than any centralized entity combined. And so,
Hmm.
if Anthropic and OpenAI combine for $685 billion in market cap, you can bet Bittensor has a very high likelihood at one day surpassing that valuation if we keep growing the way we are, incentivizing correctly, creating cutting edge output, which by the way, we definitely have.
Hmm.
And it's only year number 4. Think where we're going to be after 2 halvings in 5 years or even 10 years time, right?
Yeah.
I think Bittensor will be the fastest asset class or asset to hit $1 trillion again because of Reed's law, because of the
Hmm.
exponentiality of the subnets. And once there's a use case, an absolute killer use case that becomes public and heavily utilized, and people are like, "Oh my God, this is backed by Bittensor," you can bet a lot more interest and capital will flow into the network.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm excited. I think you are correct. And I think, yeah, let's see what happens here after the first halving. And then as we approach 2030, I think there's a very exciting timeline for Bittensor as well. So, CH, you've been boots on the ground at a lot of different events, conferences. You mentioned proof of talk. You know, what is the sentiment like around Bittensor TAO from, connecting and meeting people on the ground? Because, quite frankly, I haven't been at many of these events. How does that differ maybe from the sentiment that you see on crypto Twitter or on X or on social media in general, if there is any differences, and maybe there's a common thread between the people involved in TAO that you kind of pick up on at these events as well.
I think the energy is so contagious. What Bittensor meetups feel like are from what I've heard, it much feels very much like the early days of Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Because of course, the way Consta set up Bittensor is to kind of mirror Bitcoin. right? Everything from the token supply to really trying to wither away the Open Tensor
Hmm.
Foundation, just like Satoshi, how he stepped away after 3 years being on the network, right? So Const has this obsession with making Bittensor very Bitcoin-like. And so, Open Tensor Foundation, they don't spend money on marketing. There's no VC funding, so to speak. There's no, like, it's not how crypto usually operates. And so what Const has done, I think, is tremendous, but also it just means that it's a very slow growing organism, so to speak. It's a very organic movement. It really
Hmm.
is a movement, right? And you can feel that when you go to these meetups or conferences. I mean, I work at BitGet and we're one of the biggest crypto companies in the world. And I go to Token 2049. I go to some of the biggest conferences in the world, and they feel very corporate and they feel just like blowing money into this thing and
Hmm.
call it a day. Don't get me wrong, I love going to those things, but with BitTensor, it just feels like small group of people, very aligned, very passionate. How do we drive this thing forward? Um, but the growth we've seen in these meetups have been tremendous. I mean, last year I even tried to go to a BitTensor meetup, and it was so small. I mean, they oversubscribed, so I didn't even get in, which is funny because
Hmm.
I'm so intertwined in the ecosystem and content, and still I didn't get in. But it was still really small last year,
Hmm.
and there was like one meetup in Asia during Token. There was like nothing else. And this year, I went to Paris in June. In September, I went to Korea. And then the week after that, I went to Singapore for Token 2049. But a
Hmm.
lot of people flew in for Token, not even just to go to the conference, but just go to the side events. And you can
Hmm.
start seeing that there was a lot more people participating in the ecosystem that are from all over the world. But the meetup in Asia is definitely growing. And I'm in Taipei,
Hmm.
so I gauge a lot of the interest and yeah, just gauging the interest of people in Asia. And I have to say, I mean, the passion is unmatched. There's so much interest, there's so much excitement. I think whoever is in Bittensor, if you see the value, you just want to evangelize because you're just like,
Hmm.
it's hard to find the next big great coin, right? You have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, and I honestly feel like Bittensor is that next big three,
Hmm.
right? And still early days, and so whoever is in the potential sees that potential, and so it's not a money grab, but it's more of a you need to get as many people on this opportunity as possible because we're about to rip any day, and it's going to be
Hmm.
massive, and it's going to be such a household name down the road, and it's just like getting the Bitcoin at $400.
Hmm.
So the energy is really contagious, and it's really really exciting to be a part of it.
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. Awesome.
So now
Um,
you got to fly out for it.
exactly. Exactly. Sign me up. Sign me up. So
Absolutely.
we've talked about the halving briefly. You mentioned, I think we're about 55, 56 days now out from the first halving, which I think a lot of us are anticipating as being a little bit of a catalyst potentially for price. And I know we're
Mhm.
basing that somewhat on what Bitcoin has historically done in the aftermath of its halving events. So curious, maybe first of all, part one of the question is, what do you anticipate happening in the maybe the immediate aftermath of the halving here in less than 60 days? And then what other catalysts do you think we need for BitTensor to help take it to the next level? If at all, and and where do you think they might come from?
Yeah, I think the halving will be huge. There's going to be a supply shock, and so okay, so yeah, I've been in Bittensor since January of last year, and when I first found the ecosystem, I think there were less than 32 subnets, and I think there were like 100,000 active wallet addresses.
Hmm.
Today, subnets are 128. So that's like 4x growth. And then I think wallet addresses have more than doubled at this
Hmm.
point. I know the wallet addresses were like from this stat was from many months ago. So what is it today? I don't know. I feel like it's probably even grown, especially from the last week of the price appreciation.
Hmm.
So, but the price has been stagnating. It hasn't really moved up. But what that shows you is that a lot of times price doesn't reflect network growth and activities. and there's going to be a major repricing, I think, from the halving. So all I look is, I look at the metrics. The price again does not reflect. So another example, for example, is to look at Jeff Bezos and Amazon, right? Amazon ripped super high and then it tanked like 90+% during the dot-com boom. And somebody asked Jeff Bezos, was like, like what's going to happen with Amazon? The price has gone to the gutter. And he was like, I look at all of our metrics, everything is going up, but our stock price is going down. So at some point, there's going to be some major repricing. So I believe that's coming for Bittensor. And the halving is going to be huge, because if all these metrics are going up to the right and the price hasn't been going up, if all the demand is only going up, but then the supply gets cut in half all of a sudden, you can bet price is going to move upwards violently to go to equilibrium, right? Simple supply and demand dynamics is going to be at play. So I think that in itself we're going to see some violent upward movements. But at the end of the day, I think it's just a killer use case coming out that is going to blow everybody away. Because when you study Bittensor, you understand the cost savings that you get from utilizing these subnets are astronomical compared to centralized entities. So we talked about ridges earlier, for example. When I did research on ridges, Shaquille said for the compute that they were getting, they utilized Shoots, which is the biggest subnet on Bittensor. For a 6-week compute fee, they were paying $46,000 for 6 weeks compute. Shaquille said if they were to use Anthropic for the same exact compute, it would be more than $2 million. So that's $46,000 versus $2 million that they would pay, right? How much of that is in savings? You can do the math, right?
Yeah.
I think it's like, 90+% savings that you would get. And so that in itself is still such an unknown gem for most people, right? And I just think it makes all the sense in the world for a lot of these AI labs, for companies to plug into Bittensor, to utilize the compute there, right? Because they're saving a ton of money, right? So that's on the cost saving side. But also on the innovation side, you're getting a lot of these subnets that have literally best in class output. For example, I got to shout out to my boy Ken over at Bitmind, right? Subnet 34, deepfake detection. The incentives that they've designed is now allowing that subnet to create the best AI deepfake detection tool in the world. There is no other tool that can detect deepfakes better than Bitmind. So that's one use case. Ridges, solving for SWE benchmark, literally best in the world. They've beat Anthropic. Anthropic was like 75% accuracy at the very best. Ridges has beat them at over 80%. And Ridge is about to release a front-end product that people can then use, which can help with their vibe coding, right? Really eliminate, coders in the future. And so that's going to be really exciting. You also have other subnets like Zeus that's producing literally best weather forecast in the world. You have 404 Gen that's created the world's largest 3D data sets, 3D assets because of the incentives. And so again, what you're seeing is the cost savings you get from using Bittensor subnets is unmatched. It's a no-brainer to plug into the Shoots and the Liams and the Targons of the world, because these subnets, they provide compute and other AI infrastructure that is drastically cheaper than any centralized entities out there. But then also you have these subnets that are creating cutting-edge, state-of-the-art AI as a result of the incentive. So you have these two things that are moving simultaneously, being served on a platter for anybody to come and plug into the network. And again, we're on the 4th year of Bittensor's existence. Yeah. And the compounding that you're going to get over time and the exponential growth is going to be staggering. And it's human brains, we can't comprehend the exponentiality of these things. We think in linear terms, right? And Reed's law is at play. You're starting to see all these different subnets connect to each other, really helping proliferate each other. And so, I don't know if there's like a single catalyst that we can identify that's going to kind of blow Bittensor out of the water. But I think all the combination of all these different things is going to get to a point where escape velocity will be so evident
Yeah.
that, it's going to be like, holy shit, what is this thing? We got to get in.
Yeah. I think it's like the with most crypto projects, you see the price action happening, and then you're like, okay, I better go investigate, the fundamentals and what's actually happening under the hood here. And I think it's almost like the inverse for Bittensor. Yes, you do have to dive under the hood to initially see what's going on, but then you're like, there's so much happening here under the hood. The fundamentals are so structurally sound, and like you said, you're kind of like, okay, when is price going to catch up to what's actually happening under the hood here with all of the subnets, all of um, the models, the incentives that everyone's building? I think it is only a matter of time, and it is a little bit of a learning curve. So hopefully, this video is helpful for anyone who's kind of early in that journey. But yeah, I think there is a repricing coming for sure. Um,
There's no doubt. And I think, with crypto AI, it is comically undervalued. I mean, AI is the biggest narrative that
mhm.
we have this cycle. There's no doubt. I mean, look at how well, OpenAI has performed in their
Yeah.
valuation. Anthropic, right? Just went absolutely ballistic within a few years. And if you look at the crypto AI sector, Tao is the number one player, but I think the whole space is like $30 billion, which is
Yeah.
smaller than like Dogecoin,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's comically undervalued. And Pareto distribution is true across all markets. It's a first principle thinking, right? So if you look at the Pareto distribution, which by the way is the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the value will accrue to 20% of the protocols and or the asset. So if you look at gold, right, the gold market, the commodities market, gold market takes up majority of the liquidity. If you look at the crypto market, Bitcoin, Ethereum, they take up majority of the liquidity in the crypto market. If you look at the Nasdaq, the FANG, they take up majority of the liquidity in the market, right? So that's true across all markets. And so if you think open source AI will beat closed source AI, which I think fundamentally we believe that to be true, to be the case, because there's just a lot more contributors that make the thing compound faster and greater. If you think that thesis is correct, then you just bet on the winners.
Mhm.
Bittensor is the AI, the crypto AI leader. And again, the whole space, 30 billion. I mean, I just don't see a world where that doesn't reprice violently to the upside. Crypto AI
Yeah.
is for sure going to grow, and Bittensor is going to suck up majority of the liquidity, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Awesome. You mentioned a few different subnets already, but I would love for you to give us uh, a quick rundown, maybe three subnets you think are underrated or maybe even underpriced right now. We know some of the big players like Shoots and Ridges. You've spoken about them, but maybe there's a few, hidden gems that you've been keeping an eye on. What's tickling your fancy here lately in terms of underrated subnets?
Well, I gotta say, maybe shout out to Subnet 11 Dippy. I really like Companion AI. I think, for me personally, I'm not the ideal demographic, but I understand that there are a lot of the younger generation who like to stay at home, and I think COVID kind of accelerated this culture. People like to stay at home, they like to be on the computers, and now they like to interact with AI, right? So companion AI, there's definitely a loneliness epidemic. You can play as it is. I mean, it is what it is. It's a trend, and so for me, I like to just position myself to profit from trends. And
Hmm.
so the loneliness epidemic is only going to keep increasing. We see really a decrease in birth rates. I think that contributes a lot to it. But ARK Invest says that the companion AI space is going to go from, I think it's like 30 million this year to $150 billion in 5 years.
Wow.
That's 250% compounded growth rate
Hmm.
in 5 years.
Yeah.
That's insane, right? And what Elon Musk did this year was that it solidified that narrative because Grok, they just released the companion AI on their LLM. And so if Elon Musk is positioning himself for that space, you can bet that whole entire niche is going to proliferate,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the biggest player in the centralized world, it's God, now it's slipping my mind. From Google. Google bought out like billions of dollars of a company that specializes in companion AI.
Okay. Hmm.
Gosh, what is the name? This is bothering me. I
Yeah,
know
I
this,
don't
but
know it either.
it's I'm brain fart. But either way, uh, there's a company that was bought out by Google, and they were, I think that when Google bought them was like it was like a $2 billion exit for the founders.
Hmm.
Um, and so Dippy, what they're doing is they're building a decentralized counterpart to that company. But that company, again, closed source, centralized, and there was a lot of censorship on that. Actually, one of the biggest feedback that users were giving, according to Reddit, was like um, there was a lot of censorship. There was a lot of controlling of the platform.
Hmm.
But Dippy just flips on its head to say, hey, everything is open source. You come on. And actually, Dippy uses Targon for their
Hmm.
compute, right? So again, you see it's another use case of subnets using other subnets to drive down the cost to optimize further. And Dippy, the team is cracked. I mean, these guys, they were previous founders of another platform that had like 100 million users. And
Hmm.
Dippy, by the way, according to data from I think like 1 or 2 months ago, they already have 8 million users on Dippy.
Yeah.
Dippy already has 8
Yeah.
million
I couldn't
users.
believe that number when I heard it as well.
Insane, right? And so I think that is underrated. I think it is a hidden gem. I think again, violent repricing to the upside.
Hmm.
But that's just my humble opinion. I have exposure to be fair, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, and also DSV, Mark Jeffrey, they're also really bullish on Dippy. These are some of the other big players within our ecosystem.
Hmm.
And yeah, so there's that one. I mean, gosh, there's 128 different subnets, right?
Give us
But
one more that you're famous for.
well, I already shout out Bitmind. I think Bitmind
Mhm. Yeah.
is solving a massive pain point. Deepfakes are a way scarier problem than most people think.
Hmm.
By the way, from my latest research, more than 3 billion people have been exposed to deepfakes in various elections around the world, everywhere from the
Hmm.
US, the UK, Singapore, Taiwan, some of the leading democracies in the world. There have been deepfakes that were exposed to the voters.
Hmm.
Okay. Also, you have, um, the Israel Gaza conflict. There were a lot of deepfakes there, obviously, not to mention, Russia and Ukraine, a lot of deepfakes there. And so narratives is everything, right? So deepfakes will shatter a lot of fake narratives that are being formed. And I think that's a tool that you don't want to not have in your arsenal. And
Yeah.
so I think Bitmine is also going to do big things. And they're also backed by some of the biggest players, including David Lowy that I mentioned, who's
Hmm.
the Googler, right? So that's also a great subnet. And I also advise him on a lot of strategies. So fair
Hmm.
warning there, I also have exposure.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there's a lot of different subnets. But again, I think if you're watching this video and you're new to Bittensor and you're still trying to figure out the ecosystem, all these subnets are great. They all have different use cases, but also you have to be smart in that, you know, a lot of the institutional demand that's going to be coming in, they also have to manage your risk. And so they are for sure going to be positioning themselves maybe in the top subnets because A, there's most liquidity, and also B, it's just a little less risky. So
Hmm.
if you're completely new to BitTensor, obviously study BitTensor first. But if you really want to get a foray into subnets, maybe position yourself, on a higher percentage into the top subnets to start, and then you can dip your feet and start kind of going down the list and take some more risk, going further out on the risk curve. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think just research to see why are the top subnets. Also, another great subnet that's undervalued, I think, is also Synth, right? With
Hmm.
James Ross. This guy's a cracked founder. Shout out to James. And they do a lot of price predictions and huge use case, right? TPN, Subnet 8, also another one, kind of a decentralized hedge fund. So
Hmm.
there's a ton of different really cool use cases that are being built
Yeah.
that I think will have massive value.
There's something for everyone. I think no matter, no matter what your skill set or what you're interested in, I think you'll find a subnet that resonates. And so I think yeah, take a bit of time to do a deep dive. CH, it's been a pleasure to connect. I'm definitely going to leave your links in the description. So go over, check out CH's YouTube, hit him up on X as well. Any final words of wisdom, anything you'd like to share with the group watching, and anything that you can leave us with?
Well, Gordon, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been a pleasure to connect with you. Like I said, I've been following your content. Hats off to you. It's great stuff. And last words I would say is to keep learning, find your unfair advantage, do something to contribute to the ecosystem. Every single opportunity that I have today are a result of my content that I've created. And so I think always try to give more than you think you want to receive, because the more you give, karma is a real thing. It's going to come back tenfold to you.
Mhm.
Everything I have today, again, is a result of everything, all the work that I put in. Maybe not immediate in monetary rewards, but over
Mhm.
time, I've made way more money than just not making content, to be honest with you. And so the connections that you can build from content creation, obviously, whoever's watching this, maybe you're a coder, maybe you like to do other things. Like Naval Ravikant says, right? You want to create leverage. And what are
Mhm.
some of the leverages that you can create in your life? You can do capital leverage, investing money. You can have labor leverage. You can hire people to do output for you, or you can code, right? Coding leverage, or media. So I chose to go the media and the capital leverage, right? And so again, I think anybody watching this, study Bittensor. Don't listen to anything I say. Do your own research. I don't want to I got to just repeat that, because the more research you do, the more conviction you have. And the more conviction you have is what allows you to hold through the crazy drawdowns, at least in crypto and Bittensor. Like
Mhm.
I've held through the last almost 2 years. I've been through the last 90% drawdowns. And during those times, I got excited because I was like, oh my God, I can position myself and get more TAO. The game is accumulate the digital asset, and over time it's going to grow to become bigger than what you can comprehend in your brain. So that is what I will leave all the homies watching here. Gordon, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again.
Yeah, really appreciate it, TH. Thank you for taking the time. Check out the links below, guys, and we'll definitely get you back, in a few weeks, in a month or two, for another update. We're gonna have the halving. Maybe we can dissect everything in December.
Yeah, let's do a having party. It'd be great.
Awesome, love it. Thanks, my man.
Cheers.